It's 7:05, and I think we can call the meeting to order. Our first up on our agenda is United Illuminating. Eileen Lopez Cardone, and I don't know.
Mike Scarsi.
Mike Scarsi.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us come and speak. Here to talk just briefly overview of what we have to offer businesses and the residents of the area. Representing the electric company United Illuminating and Southern Connecticut Gas. If you're not aware, we have money available for efficiency upgrades on existing buildings, facilities, operations, and electric as well. New construction as well. So as a 30-second elevator speech, if you've got an existing facility, commercial, industrial, there's probably not too much of that around here, but you might know someone who does. And you're looking to upgrade some equipment or change a process, we can help you with buying down the cost of that through rebates, incentives, can help you do some evaluation, confirm savings. If there's a new building, anything above code, we can pay up to 75% of the incremental cost that's greater than the standard code offering. Locally, what I'm working on right now with Betsy, who's not here, and Tony, is we're looking to bring a group in to look at the entire town of Woodbridge and upgrade everything that hasn't been done yet. There's been a lot of work done here, but just in one fell swoop come in and do the rest of what's available for the town for energy upgrades, which might be controls for the center building here. If there's some lighting to be done in the center building. There's one interesting thing that's you've been a member of or not a member, you've participated in the EPA Portfolio Manager program, which automatically will download your electric and gas bills to a central hub, and you get a score. The score is relative only to you and similar buildings, but the town of Woodbridge is being used as an example to entice people to come in because you have a firehouse that has got something funny going on right now, and we notice that because your score is higher than any other firehouse in the area. So, what's that?
Higher in a good way, or
no, higher. I'm sorry. It's lower. It's lower in a bad way, and so that's what kind of started the whole conversation with coming in doing the rest of the town. But if that portfolio manager, if you hadn't bought into that, then we wouldn't have noticed it. So there's a lot of programs like that are out there. The schools have all been entered, but any business can eventually get in on it. And once it's set up, it's downloaded.
So what does that mean? How does a business get in on that?
On the portfolio manager, you'd reach out to me and to start with, and I would through a series of permissions granted back and forth and identifying the accounts with the building, we would download automatically 3 years of billing history into this center hub. And then you would own the data and can share it with whomever you want and us. And you can manage, you get reports as to how you're doing. If there's a trending down, there's a red flag that says, hey, something's going on in my building. I got to look into it. If you're, some towns and school boards have a goal of LEED, and LEED requires a certain score. Or there's an improvement, a goal of 10-20% by a certain year, and that's a good baseline. We would establish a baseline. Basically, it chunks it down to BTUs per square foot per building type. And the score is based on normal weatherize. You can even look and compare how a firehouse here is doing to another part of the country and taking out the weather data. So for you, it was very good investment. We're going to try to figure out what's going on over there, and we wouldn't have noticed, assuming it's a new building, relatively new building. It's probably in good shape, but no, this little red flag popped up. Haven't quite dug into it yet. Just started thinking about it a week or two ago, and part of the process is I'm going to try to see if we can incorporate this into the bigger project.
And is this just for electric consumption then, or is it for? Do you also have a gas part of the business?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The portfolio manager will download utilities. So if it's a regulated utility, even water, which I think you're on.
Only some place. Well, the firehouse probably is. I hope. But most of Woodbridge is not.
So if you're on a oil or propane delivery, you would need to enter that periodically to stay current in the portfolio. But once you're set up, the electric and gas are automatically done through our portal. But the other part of what I'm here for is to support businesses that are looking to expand or make improvements, and businesses that are looking to do that kind of work as well. If you're not familiar with the programs, that's what we're here to discuss. There's commercial, industrial programs. We have programs for residences too. We're going to leave a couple brochures. I have forms that are taken down from Energize CT website, but they can be fairly aggressive. 50% of a retrofit, and there's a couple different programs on the commercial and industrial. Basically, if you're making an improvement to something that's already working okay or not working okay, and it's not at the end of its useful life, then we'll pay up to 50%. If you're making
give an example of what that thing would be.
Retrofitting lights in down in the library, for example.
Okay.
You just did that, and we paid an incentive to up to 50% on that retrofit. An example of a 75% incremental would be a boiler that's at the end of its life. It's a 30-year-old boiler, and you're thinking about replacing it. Then we would only pay 75% of the 80% efficient boiler to go to a higher 95% efficient boiler. Another really good example is Amity. I know it's not the town, but the high school's got the fuel cells in there. We pay 50% of the cost to recover the heat to heat the school, and now I'm looking at it with Jim Sisa to take that heat and cool the school. So the waste heat could potentially cool the school. It's not going to be a cheap process, but I'm going to see if we can cover half that cost of that. It's not cheap to run that big chillers in the summer. So it's going to be an interesting thing. I hope it can, because it's waste heat, and it's going to be run on that waste heat that's just being sent.
Can you store the heat? Oh.
You store the heat?
Well, so so how do you air condition from the fuel cell?
Well, it's a heat source. So it's called an absorption cycle. Instead of a compression cycle where a motor compresses a gas to, like in your air conditioner in your home, think of your sweat evaporating off your skin. That's evaporation. It's cooling. So you create a salt-rich section of this machine that attracts moisture. So it attracts moisture from one section over to this section, and it cools this water over here. Now, to get that salty water, the brine, dense enough or concentrated enough to absorb the water, because it gets diluted when it absorbs it, you've got to put heat in it to evaporate the water out. So you put heat in over here to make it salty and attractive to water. You get rid of that heat, and you take the brine over to another section where it evaporates to here, and you pump it. You pump the brine solution around, and the cold evaporation happens here. So it's not really good, not really efficient unless you have a waste heat source, and which you do. And there's really no use for that heat in the summer. And coincidentally, it matches almost perfectly the cooling load. So we could eliminate 2 of the 350-ton chillers, or one of the 2 chillers, which the other one doesn't really come on that much. So we could probably eliminate all your electrical cooling load there.
But you have to have a fuel cell for that one.
No, you have to have a heat source.
Just to get
With waste heat.
And we're giving you the heat.
Okay.
UI is giving you the heat for the school. We have no use for it.
Huh. Okay.
So we're giving you the heat in the winter. We'll give you the heat in the summer too.
Huh.
We're happy to get it utilized. Now your fuel cell's going to be 80+ efficient as an energy provider, which not a bad thing for us to put our name on and say we helped them out with that.
Very cool.
Excellent.
No pun intended.
And
So,
and if I may just interject, there are 2 case studies in your packets. I know your packet. Similar businesses. They're not Woodbridge case studies, but they're similar types of businesses. And you can see what was done and the savings that those businesses had. So there's a lot of information there and lots of phone numbers.
let me give you another timely, if someone could act quickly. There's an incentive for kitchen equipment, high efficiency kitchen equipment, cooktops, fryalators, that kind of thing, dishwashers. And it's a standard offering that we have. It's up there. It's a rebate. Occasionally, when we're trying to promote it, we'll increase the incentive. And if you can get one installed in the next 4 days, which is possible, we'll double the incentive.
And is that for residents as well? Or,
no, that's
or
for commercial cooking equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a tough one because people tend to buy used for restaurants or homes, or could go into school if there's. Sure, I'm assuming.
But it has to be new because it'll be more efficient. Because you need an efficiency factor on the.
Yeah, it has to meet a certain level, and the distributors know what that is, and it's spelled out on the website as well. But give me a call. There's information in the packets of.
I know that UI, or is it Avogrid now, or is it UI? You're going by both?
We're moving to Avangrid.
Yes, but right now the operating company, we are UI, SCG, CNG.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that in the past, the company's heavily promoted solar panels and solar sources. Is that still an ongoing program, or is that stopped? Or?
My understanding is it will support it from the utility side, but there's no incentives for it.
Right. No. Right now we're working, doing a major program with the town of Fairfield.
Okay.
Doing solar installations in the town of Fairfield. And that's a partnership between UI and Fairfield. It's just rolling out, so you'll probably learn more about it in the media. I don't know all the details behind it, but we do promote it and partner with it.
But I know in the past couple of years there's been a lot of incentives for private businesses to put solar panels on. Has that been discontinued now, or is it still?
It's not from us.
No, it's the solar companies. Yeah. But we
No,
do.
it was part of it was through the state. You had to go through UI, and then you get to sell the Z-Rex back to UI. I mean, it was pretty complicated.
Maybe we were
equation.
paying the Z-Rex for them.
Yes. That's still in place. The Z-Rec program is still there.
It is, and there's still people can still apply to sell their Z-Rex, whatever. To
Yes.
What is sunsetting is the net metering, being able to generate more during the summer than you use, and banking that. That's going to sunset sometime in the near future.
Huh. Okay.
You're all familiar with the microgrid, right?
Can Can you explain that a little bit?
Not in great detail. I know
Okay.
it's an operation.
Okay.
We test it quarterly to make
Okay.
sure it works and that it will not fail you during a storm.
So is it like a generator then?
Yeah, it's just like a generator.
how is it
It powers
powered?
seven sites in Woodbridge.
And how is it powered?
It has, each site has a generator.
Okay.
No, I was just
No.
told.
Well,
Okay.
I got him the $3 million grant, so I know about this
Okay.
project.
Okay, thank you.
The fuel cell, about 2 megawatts, 2 million watts of power generation is sitting over at Andy.
Mm-hmm.
That runs 24/7.
And what power does it use to
It
run?
uses natural gas.
Okay.
So part of the reason, or the benefit of that fuel cell was we were able to bring some gas here that was not cost effective, that you would have had to pay for the line extensions. So at the time, I wasn't working for UI. I was sitting on the other side of the table from Mike Stein and Eileen or Terry, excuse me, and they were offering to bring the gas to the town, or if the fuel cell came in. So that thing generates electricity, and we own it. It's in Connecticut. It's defined as renewable. So it was a benefit to UI to have a renewable energy source. And what it is it's sitting there generating power out to the grid. In reality, the power goes to the school. It's like water trying to flow upstream. It goes to the closest sources that we would normally feed. So the electricity, the electrons generated from that fuel cell are kind of staying in the town, although they're not dedicated to it. It's just the way it's going to go to the first customer it sees. In the event of an outage, what happens with the microgrid? So you have underground lines buried and connected to the town of this, the DPW, fire, library, whatever it's connected to in the school. Those switches are now open, so the power would come out onto our lines, down the street, down through the meter, and in like it normally would. It just wouldn't come from the substation. During an outage, our source opens up from the substation,
And does UI then decide to open that up?
No, it's automatic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's automatic. So, it may be manually controlled, but the point is it should be as seamless as possible so that it switches over to backup mode. So it's a big backup generator for the town.
Right. Okay.
It's not sitting there idle waiting for an outage to happen, and then the outage happens and it comes on like a standby generator. I'm guessing I know the fire station has a big standby generator. And in fact, because of that, I'm fairly certain that's not connected to the microgrid. There was a right-of-way issue with the state road and a utility crossing the state road, if I recall right. So I could be wrong that it is connected and they might have gotten past that, but we didn't need to connect because there was already a standby there. And there was no need unless you could have sold the generator or had another use for it. So that thing sits there, and that's why it's exhausting all that heat that you're utilizing. Is if we didn't recover for the high school for the school in the winter and now potentially cooling, it would just heat the air. Excuse me.
So basically, a microgrid is a big generator that's powered by liquid natural gas that somehow is more economic to supply to the school than to go through the electric grid. Is that correct? And then if a storm happens, the town gets to use that energy as their backup generator.
The real intent of the microgrid is backup, highly reliable power.
Okay.
Is it cheaper than conventional sources? I don't know for sure the answer, but I'm going to guess no. Distributed energy is typically not cost effective unless you have the use for the heat most of the time, if not all the time.
Which is why you're trying to use it for the air conditioning?
And, for us, we needed to have a renewable energy source, and this was a great way for us to have.
Why did
we
the
committed to it? with the state
I see. Okay.
for renewable energy, and this investment was a better investment versus a PV farm somewhere that doesn't produce electricity 85% of the time. We got something generating 2 megawatts 24/7. And then at the time, I don't know if you recall, there was $15 million worth of grants that were offered to the state abroad for microgrids after Sandy, after that disaster of power outage for weeks. And this was one of the towns that was ideally situated where all of your functions were really close.
I see.
And we looked at putting it other places. I looked at putting hot water pipes through the town, and you would have had to retrofit everything because you don't have boilers in every building. Some of them are heated with a gas furnace, and so it just would have been over costly. And we were already struggling. Tony and I were trying to figure out how to make it financially viable for the town and assure that you're going to get your money back when UI came in and said, we'll own it. So it solved the problem. And from UI's perspective, it was a good investment to get that renewable goal. So the microgrid is really the wires and the control of how it backs up the power. Combined heat and power, CHP, is what I think you were referring to. That is done commonly in industries that can use the heat year-round, or hospitals. Hospitals are a great place for a CHP system because they need hot water every day of the year. And so they typically will size their generator for that hot water, and whatever the electricity is generated, that's how much they offset their electric bill. So it's a little different. Hartford has one that's spread out a little bit more at a school. We try to recover the heat there, but it wasn't possible.
So do you have any programs now that you think our businesses should take advantage of?
Oh yeah, the Energy Opportunity EO program, which I have.
Which is the lighting fixtures and things?
The lighting,
refrigeration.
If there's a compressor, I don't know the profile of what you have in the area for business types, but air compressors, refrigeration, heating and air conditioning, controls for buildings like these.
You mean controls like the temperature control there that looks like it's from the 70s? That one?
Yeah. There's I guess there's been proposals for the center building for years that have been not cost effective. And what's happened, I think the audit is 13 years old. What's happened since then, the sophistication of controls has gotten to a point where you can do almost anything. You can sense CO2 in an area and modulate the outside air coming into a space relative to the CO2 levels.
Wow.
And you can sit at your desk and say, I don't like it that bright. Dim it down, the light over your head if you want. The controls and lighting have become very flexible and usable. So the lighting is typical. A lot of that is becoming a code. So we can't incentivize something that's a code, but the controls on lighting we can. We're going to. So we're looking at we're diligently trying to find new sources of energy conservation. One that I'm working on is if anybody's got a spray booth in an auto body repair shop, major gas savings. If
they're tied to the gas line already.
Yeah. Well, even if they're not, I'd be happy to introduce. If they're a propane heater, I'd say, you got to go talk to these guys. It'll work for them. There's electric savings too, but it's heavily geared towards gas savings because it reduces the amount of outside air it has to. But controls are hot on our list of what to go after. Process controls.
What is a process control?
Looking at how a piece of equipment is operated and controlled. Imagine a whole line of machinists with their panel and the LCD. The screen is on all the time. All the time. They don't ever shut it off. You know, controlling it to dim or shut off. One other little thing I should probably talk. Well, it doesn't matter. It's free heat, but controls on occupancy and CO2 sensors in bathrooms. And they're designed for a certain amount of air being exhausted. If no one's in there, you don't have to exhaust and dump all that conditioned air. I've got a project up in Hartford that I couldn't believe the savings at this one facility. So, you know, in the bathroom, yep. It was 25 horsepower, a fan just blowing air out 24/7. So I would say if you're using energy and you're walking by something going, that's an energy hog, but I don't know how it works and I don't know what I can do about it, call us up.
So, okay, and so they call you, or they just call you? I mean,
whoever you call, you're going to end up with the right.
Okay.
If you call me, I'm going to direct you to the appropriate representative that handles that. If you call him, and if it's gas, he'll send it to someone else if it's residential. So it really depends on what you're calling about. And you have numbers in your package. You have my business card in there.
Great. So if a business took advantage of the lighting program 15 years ago, they should probably consider taking advantage of perhaps the control project now.
15-year-old lighting is probably due for an upgrade.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, the LED lights are more efficient. They're better quality. So it's almost like 15 years ago, your upgrade, do it again, and it's that much better again.
And what is the incentive that you're offering now on the lighting?
It's similar to what I described earlier. It's up to half on that.
And for
the controls we're looking at changing the incentive for the controls to be more aggressive for next year. Right at the moment, we don't have any money for electric. The state took all our money, so. When January 1 hits, we reset the button and we have electric money again. But I have.
What
gas
does that mean
money.
to have electric money?
We don't have any money to incentivize an electric project for this year.
Okay, so not to do lighting and not to do controls this year. It would have to be calendar year next,
right?
Yeah,
2019. Okay.
I'm just going to jump in here because the way the electric side works is that projects are on a first come, first served basis, and the reason why we ran out of money so quickly in 2018, well, number one, the state took most of it, but what we had left of it, they were for projects that were already in the queue.
Right, got it.
So, for example, we encourage any Woodbridge businesses that is interested in this to start applying now because it's October. If they call in November, December, they're in the queue, and their projects.
And what do they have to do to get into the queue?
They have to call and inquire, say what they want. Someone will go out
and do the audit and figure out.
Right, and then they're in the queue, and when the dollars are available, they're the first ones to access it. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because in case in point, Amity, we were out of money, and Jim Sisa wanted to do a lighting project, and he says, I know you don't have any money. And I go, I know we don't, but let me just build it. And I put it in the queue, and a project fell off the table. They weren't going to do it this year. Called up Jim, and we got money for the football field to do the lights there. And you're right. And the chiller project over there, we're putting it in the queue as soon as we can figure out what it really costs to do. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, don't wait.
Okay, excellent.
To get there and have it taken off the table, then come in too late.
No, that's good to know. I sort of monopolized that. You have a business in town?
No, I've taken advantage of that 3 times in the 28 years we've been here. The electrical lighting upgrades. I've had you folks out and do energy audits in my facility. I have a manufacturing facility here in town, so we've taken advantage of everything you folks have to offer over there. It's been awesome.
What's the business?
Manufacturer service company. We're down on Lunar Drive.
Okay.
And I know the brewery's looking at some stuff, and I'm assuming you're working with the brewery, New England Brewery.
Yeah, we have people who are were you working with Fred
Before?
for your project?
Oh gosh, this goes way back. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different people over there.
Okay, well, we just have people like myself who specialize in certain things.
Yeah, Roy Holler was there for years, and I forget who the most recent people I've worked with are.
But don't hesitate. Yeah, I mean, the brewery, there's there's a lot of ways to save energy.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure that, they were talking about it last week at a meeting I was at down there, so make sure we have the right people involved in that.
I'll do that. No. I came from Vermont, and all the little microbrews that were being developed up there, they just, all they wanted to do was just brew beer, and I kept saying, you're wasting energy, you need to do this now. They're all extracting, they're throwing their mash into digesters and taking gas off them. There's so many ways to recover.
And we have
energy.
another company in town that does plastic injection molding, so again, a large energy user there.
Yeah, and for example, for them is that the plastic injection molds are typically electrically heated, and they were just
Throws off a lot of heat.
old technology's inefficient. So even though it's a big money ticket item, that doesn't scare us.
Do you work in conjunction with the state, with the Innovation Fund as well, or is that separate then?
Well, we find resources for
For the purchase of the equipment?
businesses that are
Okay.
acquiring, right, so there's
Okay.
opportunity there, we serve as a liaison, right, we put them in contact with them and then we take it from there.
Got it. Great,
So
thank you.
are you going to leave some of these? Or?
They all have them,
Oh, okay.
no, but they don't
There-
have that handout.
But there were some businesses you said that may come and take things, or I should leave.
Oh, yeah,
forms.
definitely.
Okay.
And
And
just,
I'll leave a stack of
if I could
cards,
just
too.
clarify, the solar panels are still being subsidized by the state, or does that also get into the queue? Or there's no, that's
No,
done?
the solar panels, you go through the solar companies.
Right,
And then they have, I have financing, we have the Connecticut Green Bank.
Right, that's-
offers.
yeah.
Yes, we don't.
okay,
We just kind of tell you where you can go.
I see.
Give you the resources and you take it from there and see what's.
Okay, but that also should reduce the electric consumption, so, but it's not something UI does, you'll just steer people
Right.
to in the right direction. Okay, great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So moving on to item number 3, unfortunately, we don't have a quorum, right, because we're only it's 4, go through.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so fine.
But I know that I think that Ken should be coming.
Okay, oh, so, yes, he did say he might come.
So
we can push that off.
Yeah.
Okay, I prefer to do a vote with 5. And Cirque, are you going to handle the next item?
Just quick. The business resource guide is still being reviewed by the town, and I know that they wanted to incorporate into that document links to the online permitting, and that's going
excellent.
up in November or December.
Mhm.
So kind of that's going to work.
So that'll be online permitting if someone needs a work permit, if they
Right.
need a
Yeah.
whatever permit.
Yeah.
It'll be all available online. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's definitely going to streamline. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mika, I think
Yes.
you're up
Okay,
with all sorts of summaries and updates for us.
going by the agenda as far as the Agricultural Commission item is concerned, it's still under consideration. There was no vote taken at the latest ordinance meeting. There was a considerable amount of public comment in regard to it. Almost, I believe just about everyone was in favor and indicating in their reasons for that. There was a considerable discussion as relates to a committee versus commission, and with the thought being the possibility of having a committee under the Conservation Commission rather than starting a new commission on itself. One of the concerns on the part of the ordinance committees and one of the concerns voiced by members of the public is just additional government, just adding more layers of government, if you will, by adding a commission, and the concern and things that go along with that. Not the least of which is resources in town hall being required to support those types of efforts. There was also discussion as an option for having a joint tri-town commission set up with Bethany and Orange. One of the participants, Giuliano, actually made a very, very good case in terms of why that's not such a good idea, in that it then dilutes the potential for the funding or for the grants, which is the main function or the main reason for the commission to be started and would be their main objective. And it's very true. If you're together, then how do you split that money, and things of that nature come to light. So we pretty much put that aside. But there was also discussion as relates to the State of Connecticut Farmland Preservation Program, because it was stated very clearly that the only way to get those grants was with a commission. And
Oh, interesting.
And we had received information from the state that was not the case. That's not required, as long as you have a governing organization, which the Conservation Commission does indeed qualify us. So one of the participants did make a good point in that, regardless of whether it's required or not, it seems it seems to hold true that it's viewed better. So the potential is better for grants and things of that nature, and we're verifying that. We're waiting for information as far as that's concerned before we make a final decision. The Conservation Commission did send us a letter outlining the results of their discussion, which basically really outlined all the benefits, a number of the benefits associated with it, and why it should go. They didn't indicate one way or another as how they feel as far as forming the commission. They really felt it was up to the Board of Selectmen to make that decision, but they did offer a considerable amount of information as relates to their discussions.
Is there any minimum acreage that you'd have to, or has that not even been discussed, that one would have to be considered a farm?
Yeah, there is. The town has some very specific ordinances as far as that's concerned. I believe it's 5 acres, Jody, but I don't know if it's 5 or 6. But yes, there is a minimum in terms of number of acres you can have, things of that nature. There are some tax implications. I don't know the particulars of those off the top of my head. So there's still the other. Where we're also waiting is to hear from anyone else. There seems to be some folks who feel that this is not a good idea, but they're not. They haven't presented any public information as relates to why. So we're hoping that we can collect all the information we need with the intention of deciding on it at our next meeting, which will probably be sometime in late November, early December, when the Ordinance Committee will meet again.
My only concern would be, given the mission of our commission to maximize the revenue from parcels, would be that to look at what the potential is of land over that amount of the minimum acreage that could be then reclassified as farmland.
I don't think I understand. I'm sorry.
So, let's say there are 10 parcels of 6+ acres in town that are currently taxed as a business or some greater classification, higher class tax category than farmland. So what would the worst case scenario in terms of tax implications of the plan if all 10 of those parcels then declare themselves farms?
Check with Betsy. I'll check with the tax collector and understand that a little bit better. From what I had checked on before, it appears if your taxes are only somewhat impacted. In other words, because you're classified as a farm, it does not enable you to, it's 50% of your taxes or anything like that. There is an implication, but it's not a significant implication. From that perspective, you're still taxed on the home, on the property, on your dwelling, the same way everyone is, regardless of that.
So it's just how the extra land is taxed,
Correct.
which is really not really taxed at
It's
very
not
high rate.
significant, correct.
And then in the business district, I guess it's not really that relevant.
The other implication on it, from an EDC or a commercial standpoint, is the potential of designating property that could otherwise be developed and or used for more commercial type, more significant tax revenue, and having it designated or targeted for farms.
Well, I imagine that you could change the designation if the property values rose to a place where it was more economic, where
Okay.
someone wanted to basically cash out.
But, you know, candidly, what I've heard is that there would be a group that was very specifically, that could make it more difficult to utilize available properties for higher tax type revenue streams. So, and there, you know, so it's like, why make that more difficult since that's what we need,
Right,
that
right,
type of thing there.
right. I love farms. I mean,
And
I love
everybody
having
does.
farms and
I don't think
community. It's great, and I go to
anybody
the farms
feels
too.
differently
Yeah.
about that. And it's a very strong and it's very, it's refreshing to see a lot of the young guys, the young folks, who are very, very interested in perpetuating the farms here in Woodbridge. It's refreshing. It's a good thing. We just need to make sure, you know, that we want to make an ordinance. You know, we want to write a law.
We want to have the least
We wanna-
impact on our tax bills, I imagine.
Any other questions? So zoning regulations, you've pretty much gone over, I think, even at your last meeting.
We actually, I
There-
tried to get someone here to discuss it, and I struck out.
I attended
So if
the-
you can give
I
us,
attended the last meeting, and all I can tell you is that the changes have been reduced, if you will, to really updates and cleanup as opposed to full-scale changes. The only mention of anything significant was that they created a new zone, a Z4 or
Right.
Z3, Z4. And although, whereas before they were suggesting, or some of the changes suggested that there be changes made to certain areas and putting them in those zones, that was not the case here. They
right.
did
I
not
listened
remove the
to the
language.
meeting, yeah.
They did not remove the language,
Huh.
and there's some concern there, but that was pretty minor in terms of as compared to what they were going to do.
Right,
So from what I heard at the meeting myself.
Right, so I listened to the meeting and was somewhat disappointed, honestly, given, you know, we went through the Yale Urban Design Workshop Plan, and we went through the POC process, which seemed like it was going to give us some tools to not incentivize developers, but give developers a clear cut of what they could do in town. Like happened in Hamden, because you have some really nice development going on in Hamden, like what happened in Oxford, and there's all this new development, very modest, but still interesting development going on Route 67.
That's more than modest.
Oh no, that one, the one thing is not modest, but no, that one shopping center is not modest. But if you go up and down,
yes, I understand.
there are little businesses that have opened up
Yep.
that are very appropriate. I'm not sure how that one got there, but and I'm not suggesting that for Woodbridge, but from what I heard listening, it didn't seem like we're really moving in that direction as a town. And but Jeff did say it's like to be determined, so I wasn't sure like what that even meant.
The last meeting, the last public session that they had, there was very little public comment because what everybody anticipated was not what was communicated and shown. So I don't know if folks indicated they weren't prepared necessarily since they had just seen the changes to really comment on it. So they will be holding another session.
Yeah,
in
it's October 15th. If
Right.
anybody here wants to attend, we would encourage to attend because, as I said, I've tried to get someone from town, or I actually tried to use some of our money to get the consultant to come brief us on that. She has now moved to Washington, D.C., so she wasn't available to speak with us, and so we're sort of not outside the process at this time. But I have to say, if anybody doesn't want to attend, doesn't really need to come, and I did just listen to the YouTube thing, and I was working and I had it on in the background. And
Still get something out of it.
what?
Still
Yeah,
get
so you
something
don't, it's great if you can go and attend. I'm going to try to, but just to see what's going on.
Anything else?
Yeah.
No, on that topic.
Yeah.
CCW, we had originally received three proposals. We haven't received any follow-up proposals from two of the three. Brian St. Pierre representing the proposal where they would take approximately 60 acres for approximately 100 units. They would renovate the clubhouse, renovate the pool. The tennis courts would be used for the community, and they would They would lease they would manage those facilities, and they would lease the remaining 90 acres or so back to the town, if you will, so the town retains the ability to make sure it's not at some point in time sold. Value their initial investment would be $5.1 million for that acreage. There's been a lot of requests for additional information as relates to the financing behind that proposal. It's a difficult situation because to get a lot of the particulars that he needs, they need to know that there is a project. In order to know that, they need to know they can get the land. In order to know that, you have to have a referendum where the town says they want to do that. There was another proposal just recently submitted as well. That one is in the preliminary discussion phases, so it was only discussed under executive session, so there's nothing more I can offer than the fact that we have another proposal.
So is the Brian LePere one that actually you got more information?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and he's and we're going back to him again. The biggest concern seems to be with the intent of renovating the golf course and running the golf course, primarily because you can obviously understand it from a community standpoint. If he's got community there, the golf course right next to the community certainly is a bonus.
Right.
However, the costs associated with that renovation, the thought is that they might be underestimating what those costs are. So that's primarily what's going back and forth.
And how does that relate to the zoning? What's going on with this? Has that ever been resolved?
We haven't specific. Nothing has changed since we've always been looking at that property for different uses, including development in terms of over 55. So that hasn't changed specifically. Again, we've checked with our legal, and we've been told that there are not limitations. We are not substantively leaving ourselves open any more so than we do in other areas.
So even though it's residential A, we can make a spot zone change. And
we're trying to get our arms, I can tell you the board is trying to get our arms just around making the proposals, fleshing them out enough so that we can actually take something to the public or determine whether we should go to referendum. And the zoning portion of it is something we will make certain before we do that is completely covered. But we haven't gotten that far as yet to really say. At this point in time, what we've done is we've made sure that from what we understand, that should not be an issue.
Right, but from a developer's perspective, maybe the catch-22 is because part of it is if it's not already zoned for that, then it's less uncertainty.
You'd be spending a lot of money.
What?
You'd be spending a lot of money in planning without any certainty as to what you can do.
It's no less. It's not any more uncertain than it was when Toll Brothers or any of the other proposals that we received.
They have a bigger pocketbook.
So,
I mean, for the smaller developers, it's part of the issue that we have in generally in the business district. If you don't know what you can build, then you're going to have less people willing to take that risk to invest that money.
I'll call the selectman's office tomorrow and ask if someone could verify or confirm where we are as far as that's concerned. So we have something very public and something very specific.
Yeah. I mean,
I can say.
It would seem to me that at least we should take our energies and focus it on a particular issue instead of the whole town and all the different districts, and at least try to solve one problem or one issue at a time instead of sort of this. It seems like a malaise over the whole town. If we focused on the golf course or focused on the business district, we can maybe come to some sort of a goal and accomplish something so we can help to start developing these areas that are just underutilized and sort of falling apart.
Right, and if I could relay a message back to to the selectmen, and maybe on behalf of we can't take a vote, is that in any part of the issue with social media is that voices get amplified, and I think politicians, not just here but all over the country, all over the world now, those voices have an inordinate influence on outcomes now. And I think as the world is going to have to work through this issue, but I see it evolving now with the zoning regs, where there are certain really, really loud voices that seem to have caused, a change in direction. And similarly, obviously the town could be pretty gun shy at this point with the country club, but I imagine those voices will be heard with the country club again. And I think, we can end up in a society, in a town, where nothing actually gets done because we will not be able to move forward. And, because if you take those 3, 10, 15, 20, 30 voices out of the 8,000 residents, and if that's the voices we listen to, then the town listens to, then
That is a challenge.
it's a real challenge. And I don't know how. I think the world is responding to this now. I don't think it's. I just was driving Massachusetts, listening to a podcast on how social media has influenced governments throughout the world. So the Arab Spring, and you can just go through each country individually and see how that's happened. It's something we need to reckon with.
I think the key is to make sure that the facts are somewhere that folks can access and or point to during discussions and exchanges and things of that nature. And I think that's what we need to do a good job of, is just making sure we have all the facts lined up and out there. And that's what our intent is at this point.
Wonderful.
But we are. It is a priority, Jeremy. I can tell you that from Beth's perspective. I can say very, very clearly it's a priority to, as you said, make something happen. Start taking a step, and a tangible step to move forward and improve in that area.
I just have one question, Mika. I was a little confused. You said 60 acres, 5.1 million. That's just for the 60, but you said something about the other 90.
They would own. They would be buying the entire
All of it.
property.
Okay.
And then they would sign a document, basically, Jamie, that would return the remaining acreage to the town, so that it couldn't be with the
It'll be some sort of probably easement.
right.
Okay,
So that it
but-
couldn't be used for anything else.
So it's much. We paid 6.9 for it originally, so we're already much less than we originally paid for it. But they're giving us 90 back to use in theory.
Correct. The clubhouse and the pool would be open to Woodbridge residents as well. As obviously would be the golf course.
Which of the acreage would be the golf course? Part of the 60 or part of the 90?
Part of the 60. Oh no, the 90 would be the golf course. The 60 would be the community. The 60
Okay.
is definitely for the community. And what's different about this proposal is that they're actually recommending that it be Woodfield with only a portion abutting Ansonia Road. As like if you're familiar with the golf course along this where the tennis courts are, and the first hole goes in that area there, as opposed to most of the other proposals that were really more toward on the Ansonia Road, almost on the entire span of the Ansonia Road piece there.
And have they done soil testing at all, or they haven't invested? Because I know there's a lot of shale in that area.
No, I don't
Okay.
believe that they have to. No, so far it's just documentation that's been exchanged. They visited the site, but
But the theory that 90 is it would be just golf, not just open space.
correct. In this proposal,
Okay,
that proposal.
gotcha.
Correct. There would be trails along the other areas that are the community and the public areas, for lack of a better way to put it. Communication planning. The First Selectman's Office have made some changes, and they revised some job responsibilities. Specifically, Sheila will be taking over more of the communication role that Betsy Yagla had in the past, along with her grant and the other activities the other responsibilities she currently has. With the intent being, and this speaks a little bit to what you were saying, Jeremy, Betsy Yagla will be designated as a point person specifically to interface and enhance the economic development effort. So she will be a direct resource and point of contact for the EDC.
Okay, so when is that change effective?
I didn't get a specific date on that, but
Okay.
it's just
Okay.
about imminent.
Okay.
I think you
So
can
she
reach
should
out
be our
to-
point person from
Correct.
now
She will
on.
be reaching
Okay.
out. I did ask that Beth and or Betsy contact you and Jamie specifically,
Mhm.
and specifically to set up some regular sessions where you guys can have some direct communication and collaboration in terms of what's happening.
Thank you.
So that's the plan right now.
A couple of the business owners and folks that own land in the business district area, I know they were coming together to have a meeting on their own just to talk about, just their thoughts on what's going on in the town. They asked me if we could set up some sort of meeting with state reps and some of the engineers involved with the Pond Lily, reorganization, just so they can.
Does that mean the road work?
Yeah, just
Okay.
to understand what's going on with I guess some of the business owners say that they're just with drainage and certain things like that. With when we get these now that we're getting some of these crazy
Right.
storms, you see the manhole covers popping up and the water piling out by the gas station down on Litchfield Turnpike. I think they wanted to see if they could put together some sort of meeting with economic development and some of the state reps, or yourself, and maybe some of the engineers working on the project, just to sort of for themselves, just to understand what's going on and what next steps are, timelines. So I said I would mention it in the meeting to see if there was any way to. Would Betsy be the person we would reach out to see if we could put that together?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I think it would make, at least for the business owners and the landowners that are down in that area, I think it would be beneficial to them to see us putting groups together for informational sessions. And
I actually think it's wonderful that they'll be working together. I mean, I think we need to foster that community.
I agree. I think it's what
so
we
if we
should
can help,
do.
right? No, if we can help them in any way, if we can help liaison with the state, because up until now, it seems like they've really not worked together. But to have that as a force, I think.
I think it's also important that the business community know that this commission has been trying to do that. I mean, Jody and I were the only two that attended the food truck gathering, and there was nobody new that came, but it was lack of communication. So hopefully this will help improve that, because I know we put a lot of thought into that to try to get the business community together to get ahead of this. I mean, that's what Jody wanted to do. We wanted to get ahead of this whole thing. Tried to get the information out there, and it never got out there, which is certainly frustrating. I will say, though, in terms of the flooding, in the 28 years I've been down there, considering we got 6 to 8 inches of rain during that storm 2 Tuesdays ago, West River itself did not flood, which was awesome. Because being in that business district, I mean, I remember it's terrible floods in that area. Now, we did get some flooding over at Bradley, right by the assisted living center, but the whole river didn't flood out. The residents down there didn't flood. The caterer didn't flood. So those are all areas that typically would get flooded. So the work that they did further down.
Well, they had removed the dam.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's why. I mean, part of the reason removing the dam was to prevent, in hopes of preventing
But it worked.
flooding.
It's good to see that
yeah.
in this case with that
Right.
water. I mean, I went down there 8:45 that night, and there was no water left, other than actually it was all gone. Even where the flooding was by the right in front of 245 Amity, and that whole area flooded out a little bit there. But it all left, and so a couple of cars got wet, and that was it. But I think that's huge for the business district to know that the flooding issues have been dealt with.
Yeah.
And we did ask the DOT for the DOT to come speak, and I think we asked the town, and they said the DOT was not communicative up until the point that we finally got them to speak to us. So as Jamie said, we had full intention of trying to get ahead of this with the property owners. So I'm thrilled. Let's figure out how we can get DOT and the property owners together, because I think if we can have the property owners acting as a group, it's actually in EDC best interest.
I think the key there is, like you said, get the state representatives there.
I can get. I mean, it's election season. I can reach out to Dennis and tell her.
If you would work through Betsy, though, I'd like to. I believe work through Betsy.
That's fine.
Because or just make sure if you would include her.
I'm happy to let Betsy take the lead on it.
Yeah, this is. I mean, Beth outlined the plan at our meeting. It's not as if I've been talking to her and she said she's going to do this. This is an official change in terms of responsibilities, and I do believe that it may turn things in a very good direction from a communication standpoint. I'm hoping it will.
Wonderful. Thank you.
The CERC fiscal health analysis, CERC was not able to attend the meeting this past meeting, so we didn't have any additional information. And I know you reviewed it at your last meeting, so I really don't have anything additional to report on that. But I did want to indicate to you that one of the other ordinances that is being considered is the solid waste and recycling ordinance. And there's two things that need to happen. One, our guidelines, our ordinance right now does not meet the state standard, or does not meet the recommended state standard. So we're revising the ordinance for that purpose.
So is that like, when you say it doesn't meet the state standards, does it mean we're not recycling enough things? Or?
Generally speaking, yes, you can put it that way. It's kind of more complex than that, but generally speaking, the ordinance has to reflect a more stringent guideline, if you will, and enforcement.
Is that because we have all these smaller trash haulers that people individually contract? These I use one and this guy uses another, and we're right next door to each other, and I don't even know where that waste goes.
One does one way.
And that is
an issue. Well, I think the concern is that we kind of do know where it goes, and it goes into our transfer station. Okay. And one of the issues is that what's happened from a costing standpoint. Solid waste, we always paid to haul solid waste down in, I believe they take it to Bridgeport. The rate on that is somewhere upwards of $60. I think it's $64, but it's upwards of $60. In the past, we were paid $15, $16 for the recycling that we provided. That's changed completely, where now we have to pay similar to the way we do with solid waste. And that rate has gone from us receiving 16 to us having to pay upwards of 30.
But it's still less than we'd have to pay for solid waste.
It is less, and then there's got to be the balance, because you have to balance. You have to have a certain amount of recycling as pertains to your solid waste. Woodbridge is not. We don't have a scale, so we've had a pretty loose arrangement, and our fees are by far lower than anywhere else in the area for haulers to dump waste at the transfer station. So we are looking at revising our fee schedule, where we intend to install a scale, and we intend to revise our fee schedules based on the weight and being able to measure that type of thing. But we do need to understand, because there's one of the big issues is that even within the recycling, everything's thrown together, and now there is a big issue with glass pieces getting in with plastics, and it contaminates the plastic, so it becomes more expensive to extract, and that's why the pricing's going up. So there needs to be an effort in terms of just doing a better job from a recycling standpoint. And for the most part, anytime I go to neighbors, anytime I go to most places here in Woodbridge, people recycle. People recycle to some extent. Not so much on the commercial side, and that's why I mentioned it here. Because that seems to be an area where it might be more of an issue. And as the ordinances changed, enforcement will also go along with that. So that's something that we need to work to educate our commercial owners as to the issues and the challenges that relate to recycling, and the costs that relate to recycling. But that's a plan, and it's something that I think, in a sense, impacts on this group, if you will, or who you are. Right.
So I know many places they have recycling from 1 to 7 categories. It's not really it's not even clear to me what Woodbridge does anymore. I think the last thing I remember seeing from the town was 1 and 2, which is are we also looking? Is that where the ordinance
education is? Sheila's working on the sustainability program as well, and obviously recycling is part of that. But education is one of the biggest issues, biggest challenges right now.
So we want to encourage people to recycle more, businesses and residents, basically.
Correct.
Because we're going to pay less. Before it was really cheap, now it's still cheaper.
Just generally speaking.
Right.
But in addition to that, you want to recycle properly glass and the materials, and we may get to a point where we're trying to do some sort of separation, even for folks who necessarily are going to the transfer station.
So
many people do.
While we're on this discussion, actually, of garbage, we've had recent visitors to town of bears.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I spend a lot of time in Colorado where bears are frequent. And they're actually bear-proof garbage pails, which we don't have. And I'm wondering with all of this, if we're going to need new recycling bins and things, because it sounds like we will, if we can get bear-proof ones, and the town can look into bear-proofing our trash.
I suspect as the impact is, the haulers are impacted, that'll trickle down, obviously, to the consumers.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how best, because right now, a lot of haulers I see, you just have a bin for recycling, it's cardboard, everything, they just throw it all
Yes.
into the back, they don't separate things of that nature. So if that becomes difficult for them to dispose of, then obviously they're going to transfer that on. So, and along with receptacles is a big issue.
But the receptacles are a big issue in light of the bear issue, which is not necessarily EDC, but just from my own experience. If the town, while they're looking at the ordinances, they can specify, if the town can choose what the best recycling or garbage bin is, and then specify it to the haulers, then maybe that cuts out some of the issues that...
It's not been a consideration so far, but I'll read more closely and see if there's anything in there.
Yeah,
But I don't think
some states do that.
Mhm.
Like, as I know, in Colorado, you actually have to have specific bins, mostly for the bears. But I imagine you can have specific bins then for recycling as well.
Will that lead to having like 2 different recycling bins, or 3? One for plastic, one for glass, one for metal, one for cardboard?
I thought single stream was supposed to.
Single stream is what we do. That's what's going up higher and higher. Single stream is very specific.
So we
It's
want
supposed
to.
increase.
Is there a possibility we can the town can get away from single stream then and reduce the cost, or that's the only?
That's what it's being looked at. I don't know. I know that Tony Genovese is very much engaged in what's happening with that and looking at all the different opportunities and options. But that's one of the.
Is that even an option? Does the state offer facilities that don't take single stream recycling?
I don't know.
So, what is single stream proving to be more expensive for everybody? I mean, it's
The prices, the rates associated with single stream are increases.
okay.
Yes.
So we're going to go back to the old days of
compartments.
separating brown bottles from clear bottles. And
Don't know that. All I know is that,
Okay.
it could if the costs get to the point where basically you're paying the same for everything. If that's it, but I don't know that necessarily decreases the cost.
okay.
So I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but it's a good question and something I'm gonna see if I can learn a little bit more on.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, thank you. That was really, really helpful, actually, to know, to have you here and to communicate to us what's going on at the selectment level. So
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
And I apologize. I don't know if you know. I'm working in a different town during the day now, so I'm not around as much as I used to be.
I know that I don't know what your email address is now, so and it's become.
I've got one personal one that I'm trying to get to everybody, and hopefully everybody has that.
Okay,
because you're
something
right,
came up. I was like,
I'm missing a lot, Jody. So I was missing a lot. Sheila's been really good about making sure that I get whatever she sees on my email, not on.
That goes to the wrong email address, right? All right. Well, thank you, and we appreciate you being here because I know there's been a lot of changes for you. So we started item 6. We started discussing the proposed regulations. I don't know if anybody has any comments sort of thrown at you quickly here, but I'm not sure if, I'll open it up because I think I said.
The question I have is with the changes, I know we keep asking, but is there, Mika, any sort of cliff notes of the changes? A summary of the changes that's public so we can know? Because like I said, this doesn't look much different, but
I think this is it. It's clarified the zoning that's currently existing instead of actual changes, right?
That's the Cliff Notes. That's what they offered. They said in summary, we're cleaning up and updating the zoning changes. We're not making the one change that there is that they have multiple zones that they didn't have before.
but in the business district, because it looks like the same.
No. As far as the line, they didn't change anything. With regard to zoning itself, the lines they didn't change that, and they said they didn't intend to change that. However, they created a Z4, like for example, they created a T3. I'm sorry,
Oh, the
T3 and T4.
Oh, okay.
And those, if you notice on their revised map, there were no changes to the regulations that specified this was T1 and this is now T4, for example, type of thing. There were none of those changes, but they still retain this in the language.
Where is there any T4 on this map? I don't even see T4
There's
existing on
T3.
here.
There is none.
There is none,
That's
okay.
right. That's so the comment was made. So why have it? And I think it was put there for future use, but there was no change or no adjustment made that made something that was not T4 into a T4, or a T1 to a T2, or T or anything else for that matter. But
So if we don't change anything now, we are going to miss the next cycle of development as Woodbridge, and we can sit here and not have nothing happen within the town to encourage new development and new tax base again.
I've attended a couple of the public sessions, and certainly a long way from being any kind of a subject matter expert on this. But the one thing I'll say is that I don't hear any comments or any conversation related to what you're discussing. So I don't know that the zoning board feels it's not their place or their responsibility to do that. But there's really not. I mean, obviously the discussion really revolves around the residences and the zoning associated with those. And commercial to a certain extent, but more as relates to dense population and apartments and things of that nature. So I only mention that because it's like no one ever.
Well,
myself included.
I've had conversations behind the scenes with the chairman when I thought there was the chairman of TPC when I thought there was going to be something that we could endorse, and I actually the reason why I asked for a speaker to come tonight was because I was hoping there was going to be something we could endorse and vote to say, we endorse this, this is great, we'll give you the support, go with this. And now I almost feel like I want to write, well, we don't have a quorum, so we can't take a motion, to go in the other direction and say, you are not giving us the tools as Economic Development Commission to create any economic development within town, because you're not changing anything to give people clear-cut incentive to know what they can do to maximize the value of their property in the commercial district.
What can we do as a commission to help give those business owners and landowners and those developers who are looking to figure out what they can do with their land? What can we do to help them have a voice or to get their points across to the town, just to sort of start the dialogue that you're talking about, that communication, to sort of convey their thoughts and feelings to.
Jamie, I'll turn to you as a business owner and ask, and I know you've got a lot of input from the business owners in our business district in particular.
Yeah, it's the challenge. I mean, we don't have a vote in the matter as business owners or property owners unless we live here as residents, so we don't necessarily know, and that's been the real challenge, is getting the information out. It comes back to the communication and just trying to get them together to meet about the traffic thing, and then to hear that there's finally people interested is awesome, but it's communication. I mean, that's the challenge. Hopefully, Betsy's going to be our liaison, and if Sheila's going to be taking over communication, hopefully we can improve this, and we have to get this information out. That the business newsletter went away, so we don't have that anymore. We used to have a way to communicate to the business community regularly, and that disappeared. And if we still had that method of communication, at least we can get that out there. We have the email list in town, so I really think it has to start with that, building that dialogue, and then doing more of these focus groups. And we did that realtors group, or the property owners group we did 2-3 years ago. Maybe that's something we need to do, is bring them together here again, and really focus on the property owners and the business owners in town.
But I'm looking at this, I'm just reading really carefully, just on the fly. The maximum, according to the proposal, for D1 is 3 stories. I don't know how you create the incentive, given building costs and the fixed costs of creating a new development on these small plots of land. With only 3 stories, I mean, you can tell me, I don't even know if that's economically viable to have new commercial construction. It's only 3 stories. Or for residential construction, if you want to have any sort of, some sort of, taxpayer type of thing where there's a business on the bottom and a couple of stories on the top with residents. I just don't see there's anything here that's going to encourage a developer to even be able to financially create anything. You couldn't build, under these zoning regs, I don't think you could build the Lender building. I'm not sure that you could build the Urbana building either. And I'm saying this, really reading this very quickly, but I mean, I think how many floors were in the Lender building?
Lender building is 3 stories.
Okay.
And Urbana is only
I think
2
both of them,
stories.
right, both of them were built with these regulations. I don't know.
I don't know if there were exemptions, if they got
Right.
variances, or how those were built, quite honestly.
Jody, are there any towns that have look at their zoning regs and that might provide us with a better example,
So we had tried.
design for zoning regs and try to follow that model?
Sir could help us with that, I'm sure,
Are
in
there
terms
any
of
examples? Are
other
there
Yeah,
model
that's right.
towns.
that, I mean, if this is overly complex and confusing.
No, I think this is actually quite clear. What's very clear is not much has changed.
Well,
At
that was the
that point,
message.
though,
What?
That was the message.
Yeah,
I mean, I think to that point, Brooks, that's why TP&Z brought in the specialists who work with Hamden to change things up there a little bit, and you see what the outcome of that is in Hamden. I mean, they've definitely done some stuff. They've done some new building, new construction, but I think that's what didn't make it into this, was some of that work based on bringing Leslie in and her recommendations from working in other communities.
and based on the Yellow Urban Design Workshop Plan, which clearly called for actually slightly higher buildings.
Which made it
Right.
the POCD and the POCD.
The CD, right. So this is
should have been part
basically,
of this.
we're going to adopt zoning regulations that are not in compliance with the POCD. What does that mean? I mean, we went through as a town the process to finally, after 30 years, create the POCD as required by the state, and now our TP&Z is basically saying, sorry, we're not going to do that. So I'm not.
what,
Go ahead.
I guess maybe the onus should be on them, saying why something has to be limited to 3 stories and not, the presumption be why we can't build more. And so, I mean, it's just, I don't understand.
I understand people complain about not wanting things in their backyard, and then, but the alternatives, people complain about not wanting their taxes to go up.
Right.
So unless we create this is all about the, push me, pull you between the tension of very vocal people, as I said, few voices being very amplified by social media, generally, and then at the meetings, and the needs for the town to create a revenue stream that's outside of just increasing the mill rates on the residential owners.
Well, if they happen to live in a district that has partial zoning, they have another solution, which is, I'm sorry, but you can move. You can
Yes.
sell your place and move. And I mean, otherwise, they're holding everybody else hostage.
But if you, as a realtor, if you look around this town, it's not easy to sell your place right now. I mean, you've got all this housing stock that's 3,500 square feet up to, 4,500, 6,000 square feet. What young family right now, unless you're very, very wealthy, can afford to move into this town? It's it's really hard. And then you've got, you're buying a 3,500 square foot house and now your taxes are $15,000 a year. I mean, it's prohibitive. It's really prohibitive. And if we add more housing and we have to add a couple more kids to the school and it builds up some utility, but at least we're bringing in people and families, and it's difficult right now. I mean, I've been working with some folks and showing them houses. The housing stock's funky in this town. I mean, you've got some really big, heavy utility houses. You've got double oil tanks and wells and septic, and it's not easy to live here as a young upper middle class family unless it's difficult. It's difficult.
And is it because of the taxes that it makes it so difficult?
I think it's because of the taxes, and I think we have a funky housing stock. So unless we figure out ways to create some sort of not entry level, but some sort of a way for people to come in, a younger mix of people to come into the town, we're going to price people out, and the school systems are going to suffer because there's not going to be any kids to send to the school. So
One thing that we haven't talked about is the 14, 15 acres over on Bradley and that potential development there that's been in the works since 2008 or so.
That's like 55 and over, right?
Right. I wonder if it's worth exploring who might be behind that and see if it would be, worth their time to come and talk to us. At least it's something that at the time met these rules and regs. These aren't going to change substantially to prevent that from happening, but that's a developer that wanted to do something. Why didn't they do it? Now, that was back in 2008. We know the economy
They renewed,
wasn't
Jamie. You know that, right?
What's that?
They renewed.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if
And
I'm not
so-
mistaken, it was 5 years,
maybe-
so they had to come back and renew. And they were they changed their proposal so it would not be 55 and over, and that was one of the sticking points. That is a sticking
But
point.
that's the developer that we're talking about
Mhm.
here. We're talking about somebody who wants to do something. It's 14 acres. It's in this district. Maybe
But it would
they'd
be great
willing
to hear
come-
what he wants to do. You're right, I agree.
But from my understanding, and granted, it's old data, so maybe it's changed, is that what the town approved and what they were sort of gerrymandered into approving was not commercially viable to build because it was 55 and over with commercial on the bottom,
Mixed use.
a mixed use, and who's going to buy 55 and over if you have to walk up a stair? And it's not big enough, I guess, to justify elevators. So what they have, when it was approved before 2008, when money was easy, banks would finance anything. Now they look very careful. The banks look very carefully at what was approved. So I don't know what this. I think yes, it would be great to have them come in and talk to them. It's complicated. I know Jonathan Perkins was behind that group. Is he still part of
I
it?
don't know exactly. I certainly know a couple people I can ask to see where it is. I know that some of the partners were looking to get out. One of the partners want to stay in. That partner was looking for new partners to come in and sort of get the project up and going again.
I mean, maybe there are other folks then that we can bring in.
Right, mhm.
That we've talked to Jim Urbano, we've talked to Bruce Schaefer. There are other folks that we can have come in that develop in the region, not necessarily Woodbridge, but to answer the question of what's needed here in this town. What would they do if they could? Maybe we need to continue to bring those sort of folks into our meetings to say, this is what we have. Would you develop in town? Yes, great. Or no, why not?
Yeah, why not?
And the why not would help support the improvements to this document. It would be on
Yeah.
record is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea, and if you can reach out perhaps to the owner that you know and say that we're interested in talking and seeing with them and to see how we can help facilitate them developing that property, that would be great. But I have to say, when I was in college, my senior year, I wrote a paper in Philadelphia about how Philadelphia back in the 80s was not economically viable because there was a gentleman's agreement about the height on, couldn't build higher than William Penn's hat on top of City Hall. And so there was no commercial, it wasn't economically viable to develop a site. And there was no construction at all. Philadelphia the city then decided to change zone one road. They changed where you could actually build, skyscraper. I'm not recommending skyscrapers for here, but they actually recommended you build one row of skyscrapers around Market Street, JFK Boulevard, and the city boomed. I'm not suggesting that for Woodbridge, but I do know from watching that from personal experience that if we as a town do not have zoning regulations that are economically viable for people to develop their property, they will not develop the property because it's just a matter of math.
It'll just sit fallow.
It'll just sit fallow, which is, I think, where we have been forever, and I was hoping that after Yale and after the POCD, we were going to see some...
And it was there, and it's changed.
And it's
certainly,
changed.
But what can we do to help? I'm just saying, what more ammunition
So
can we
we
gather?
can't take a vote, but I intend to go to the meeting on Monday. if anybody else would like to go with me. I can speak for myself, I can speak for the commission. Again, I don't know that we can take a vote with 4.
We could maybe take a vote and I can find out if that's a quorum.
Okay.
And if not, then.
Is Yaron still part of our commission?
Yaron is still part of our commission,
Okay, so
but
we do
he's
have
just not
8.
able to be here.
We do have 8 people then.
What?
So we do have 8 people on
We
our
do have
plan,
8
right?
people. We have a new person.
Jody, I'm pretty sure for a quorum.
What?
I'm
That's what
pretty
I
sure
think.
it's
I
certain-
it's
didn't know if
gone.
it
It's
were
gone
7
both
or 8.
ways. What?
Yeah, I just didn't know if
No,
we were
it's
7
8.
or 8.
It's 8.
Okay.
They thought we were 9, but for a while, but it's 8. And I believe with you that you actually need to have a majority. But I was told at one point that you didn't. Anyway, I'm happy to go and speak as myself or as chair, saying we are very, very concerned.
I know
Or you can all come with
meeting.
me, and then we get to speak as we can all just go and I can ask Jeff if we can speak up front and just get out of there.
Are we able to send an email out to the rest of our commission? I can't be there. I have a meeting on Monday
Okay.
night.
Yeah, I've written a letter of support already.
But can
Oh,
we
in support.
email ourselves?
But in support of what
Is that-
was?
Well, that's
Is there
in support of what they're doing, but
Is it a FOIA infraction to email our own commission to see if is it a FOIA infraction to email ourselves to see if we can get up? It is, right?
It's not a FOIA infraction.
You can't exchange information on email.
To
No,
say,
no, but
information.
to ask other economic development commissioners to go to the
Oh, no, that's
meeting.
not-
no, we can
no, no.
definitely do that.
Yeah.
And so my approach to FOIA is I always copy someone on the town, so that at least it's there. We can't actually make decisions outside of meetings. We
Right.
can't really have discussions outside of meetings, but we can inform.
Maybe those who aren't here today, maybe Ken or Yaron or some other folks would like to join.
Mhm.
I'd love to be there. There's
Right.
no way I can
Can
go.
you-
Jody, when and where is the meeting?
I think it's over. Do you know? I think it's Monday. I'm assuming it's like, I don't know what time it is.
The only thing I have on my schedule is a Board of Ed meeting, but that's not, I mean, that's 7 p.m. on Monday, but.
Yeah, it's probably the same time. Do you happen to know what time the meeting?
If you're online, I can look it up. They have the calendar. If you just go on the calendar on the
Yeah.
website, it'll tell you for sure.
Okay, thanks. Jamie, can you go?
Checking.
I'm happy to tell the commission exactly what I've said here. I just don't know. It would be better if we speak more than one of us would be there, since we can't take a motion for me to speak
And
on behalf of the commission.
I do think that those business owners and landowners that I, sort of spoke to, I think that those folks would appreciate us being there in support of their thoughts and showing our support for at least furthering this along.
Sure, yeah, and that was my support was based on the work of the POCD and the work
Right,
of the
right.
urban design study, and that, to your point, it's not in here. And those are the changes that have been made recently, which are not in favor of developing the business district.
The one thing I'll offer, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, the meeting is at 7 p.m. at the Senior Cafe Center.
Okay. I have carpool that night, so I can only stay for a certain amount of time. So I will ask.
I think they start with public
It's
comments.
7 or 7:30.
7.
7.
At the
Okay, I have a
Senior
7:30.
Cafe.
Okay.
The
Senior Cafe Center
Woodbridge
building.
Center, the senior center, as you know where the gym is.
Yeah,
If you're facing the door where you go into the gym, there will be the door to the farthest on the right.
okay.
And it goes down a few steps, and then you're in.
Can you possibly see if we can how that would work if we can speak earlier in the meeting as part of the public comment? Because I have to run carpool later that evening.
It is a quorum, by the way, I did check.
What, 5 is one? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Where did you find that?
I texted Sheila.
What?
I texted Sheila.
Oh, okay. Fine. Thank you. Like, wait, I didn't see you go electronic or anything. So it's at 7. Do you think you?
I'll have to check. I have to check in with my better half to make sure that.
Okay. So we can communicate about that through, through the town and just to see. But Jamie, you think you can be there? So at least if the two of us go, even if we're not speaking on behalf of the commission, we can speak on behalf of ourselves. And we'll just specifically point out that we were not able to take a vote on this issue. But it seems like we're in consensus. upcoming events, we're in the middle of Fall Palooza, so I encourage anybody who's watching online to seek out all the wonderful events that are taking place in town right now. And do you have an update on commercial real estate?
The only one interesting tidbit to note is that this new company, Synectic, bought the building next to Jamie's building down on the Drive, and it's great to have a property-owning business that came into town and finds it viable to run their medical device company in our
What
town.
kind of devices are they
I
producing?
don't know. I just literally drove over there yesterday just out of curiosity, and they happened to be working on the building, and I was with a colleague, and we're talking to the workers, and they showed us blueprints, and we figured out who owned it. And so,
Okay.
but it's refreshing to know that there's another company that is coming from another town.
Right. Do you think it's going to be manufacturing there on site, or is it?
I believe that they're going to have, there's going to be some a lab piece and some development or office piece.
I know that definitely they do engineering. It's father and son. They're in Milford currently, and I know they were looking for more space. So that's
They
Great.
were looking or they are looking?
no, they were. That's why they moved here. Yeah, this gives them more space.
Do you have any information, contact information or anything?
No, he didn't have a card. This was back in April or May, right after he
What's
It's
the name of the
online,
company?
Synectic. It's Synectic.
So, Jamie, perhaps when you welcome them, which I know that you will, as individually, you can ask them if they'd like to come speak with us.
I definitely did. That was literally the day he closed or something. They were
Okay.
there. I gave him my card. I said, hope that we stay in touch. And
Okay.
nothing happened until literally yesterday. I was just telling Jeremy there was no activity, and then all of a sudden everybody showed up yesterday and started doing stuff.
Yeah, I believe they're rehabbing the
Who-
building and retrofitting it to their needs. And
Who had owned the building prior to this?
it was an investor from very far away, and I'm not sure how he got into the property in the first place, but he was just looking to sort of divest his holdings in the area. So I think they got it at a pretty good price, but I think it's definitely a good thing. From what I was told, I think they're going to have close to 24 employees working there, so
Oh.
it's a nice little boost to downtown, the area. Other than that, there's not a ton going on.
Well,
There's
did
a ton of
Antonio's,
small office
did
space.
Antonio's close
I
again?
believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I believe it's for sale, the whole property, for like $750,000. The land and the building and the restaurant infrastructure. And just from knowing what we have in stock, just at our firm, I mean, there's a lot of small office space, which is sort of disheartening a little bit. There's a lot of 1,000 square foot spaces all over town in various areas that are all in good shape, but nothing really opening. There is another nail salon opening at 214 Amity Road where the bakery was.
Oh, that's
So the bakery is moving out, and there's going to be sort of an upscale salon, spa, nails, and facials and things of that nature.
Jamie, the space that burnt, was it?
The space that burnt was in, yeah. Yeah. I don't have, unfortunately, much other news about real estate.
Sadie, I know we had talked about, as we're talking about the new 24 new employees, about the bus route. When we sort of brainstormed with you, we talked about sort of reaching out to DOT. I think you were in the room, but you weren't in the lead in the room. So Tony had led the drive like a year and a half ago to see if we could get the bus route extended to Bradley Road. To Bradley Road. Because when the bus route came up to Woodbridge, Bradley Road was not feasible for buses. And then at that time, I think we had to take a survey of businesses, and I think we weren't very successful with getting our businesses to respond.
That survey,
And so, I think it's worth pursuing that, trying to pursue that again. Certainly now that Litchfield Turnpike will be widened, you said the congestion will be less because we have people, there are employees who walk up from Lucy Street to where Jamie's business is in that business district off Bradley Road, where it probably limits their ability to get employees. So maybe we can add that as an agenda item in the future.
Sure.
Because I think it's worth revisiting and seeing, now that DOT apparently has an office in town, and probably a different part of DOT, to see how we can get that jump started.
And then I would just remind you all that next month's meeting we will be doing the business visitation and sponsorship training.
Okay, so there'll be no other items on the agenda, or is that the whole meeting, or?
It probably will take up an hour and a half.
Okay.
So it's up to you if you
Yeah.
want to do a super long meeting or.
No, I mean, I think we can certainly have an update on the TP&Z meeting.
Sure.
But we don't have to have much else of substance.
Will there be any business presentations, or it'll just be that?
I don't have any scheduled,
Okay.
so maybe we just don't.
And has the town set a date for their holiday party? Because sometimes in the past we've actually not had a December meeting. If it depends on what night they choose. If they choose our night, then we don't have the meeting, or we'll have like a 10-second meeting.
Okay. I'll look into that.
Great. So at 8:40, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And second?
Second.
All in favor? It's unanimous. Meeting's adjourned at 8:41.